All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, The Bella Gamer, with my co-host, Glue Boy.
Hello.
Oh, I flipped the camera and it fucks me up every time. And today, we're going to be talking about what's going to be probably the biggest next few months in tabletop since, I don't know, Critical Role really started getting going and getting big, you know? It's going to be great, but before we get to that, we're going to let people hop into the chat here and, you know, give it a little time. So we're just going to do a little bit of small talk in the meantime. So Alex, how have you been? What's been up?
Well, I've been incredibly sick for the past week. I saw the Nurgle counter increase. Yep. But because of that, I've been completely knocked on my ass, not able to do a lot. All I've done is Last Epoch, and then on Tuesday, Oblivion Remaster. Oh man,
I'm tempted.
It's fun, I gotta say. Okay. It is literally just Oblivion. Like,
right.
They changed next to nothing except, like, the combat feels better in that they react to it. Archery feels very good, though.
Yeah.
And, like, there's some general little improvements, but overall it's the same game, and that's what makes me really like it. I'm just nostalgic for this game's jank. I haven't really played it since I was, like, 10.
Yeah, funny enough, I went to like a game convention or Comic-Con or something. Might have been SakuraCon. And I played Oblivion like as a demo at a convention. So I have like a special place in my heart for it because it was the first I played Morrowind first. But
it's a good one.
I was kind of young when I played it, and it's just a very like expansive game and a little bit more like complicated than I guess I was ready for.
There's a lot going on
in
Morrowind already. Like, that was me with Oblivion. I didn't fully get everything. I mean, I was the guy that was upset because Turn Undead didn't turn me undead.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, because I was like 10. I was like, what does this spell do? It's stupid. I stick my hand out and nothing happens.
Yeah, so like Oblivion was the first one I ever got to like do a real dive into and be like prepped and ready for, and I got it like as it released and everything. So it definitely has a little special place in my heart in the Elder Scrolls series, and I'm excited to try it. But this has just been like a financially crunchy period in our life, and also we're getting married in like a month, so
yeah. It's
also
not
just lots of games.
It'll stay around.
Right.
I only got it because I have Game Pass, which also Claire Obscura is on Game Pass too, so I can just try that out down the line when I have time.
Yeah, I'm playing that one. I got that one. I'm super excited. It looks really good, and playing around with it a bit, it makes a turn-based game feel way more actiony, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, like the style of it looks really cool.
Yeah,
and I really love the story concept. I think it's really like fun and depressing.
And also, I've gotten some of our friends back into Age of Wonders 4, so I'm been playing.
Oh, nice.
Because I love that game. I love that game a lot. It keeps coming out with new expansions.
At some point, I got to get in there with y'all because you have all the DLC, I assume.
Yep.
And if I hop in that game with you, I'll have it too, right?
Yes, we confirmed that.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cool shit in that game. And I've just never, like, fully, like, played out a long game. I've gotten decently far in, like, a campaign one, but that's kind of it.
Yeah. It's a blast. We had a lot of fun the other day. So, it's been a good gaming time, and that's why it's been hard to find time for a Shadow Drop game like Oblivion, because it's like,
yeah,
I'm already just doing so much gaming. And then also, you know, I have a baby, as I like to say, and so my time is precious. So
gotta be a lot more choosy and like picky.
Yeah. Controller games are kind of like the thing for now, because I can hold her while using a controller most of the time. So
Yeah, it makes sense.
And a turn-based game is actually pretty good for that too. So I'm in a good spot. But yeah, and I guess I already spilled some of my table talk or my small talk. We're getting married in like a month, which is hype.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming. And
I feel that too.
Yeah.
On my end.
Yeah, it's more of a finance thing than it is anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me too, we're my fiance and I are both in that state of like, we just have a different word, I guess. Let's get everything else figured out financially before we even like try to have a cool special ceremony for it.
Hi Banto, how you doing? Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Suzanne and I have been calling each other husband and wife for a long time now, pretty much since I proposed. So,
I mean, yeah, I feel similarly, and I'm not a person who like puts a lot of stock into ritual or ceremony. It feels sometimes a little unnecessary for me, unless it matters more for other people. So yeah, that's where we're at too, where it's just like, yeah, we're basically married already. We'll just one day have a party to make it official.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing, right? Is I kind of ascribe to the same thing. We've been effectively married for years now, but it's like, I also think that having a ceremony is nice because it's a time for your family to get together, and it's a time to like really celebrate it, really like carry it forward. So, while I don't think you need to get like have a proper marriage, I think wanting one is pretty valid.
Yeah, I'm just always purely the like, why do we need to do the ritual when like this thing can already just be handed in a lot more efficient? But there's also the aspect of this means a lot to a lot of other people, so I can't in these instances where it's affecting other people's happiness and people I want to see, I will stop being so ambivalent. That's just me for most things. I'm just like, whatever. I don't really care. But I care about other people a lot, so I will make sure they get to participate. I get to see everyone. They all get to meet fiance, then new wife down that point.
Right. Other than that, yeah, it's just been the 333. Last session was a lot better. I had a better focus on things, and I'm already getting some of the players asking to like, I can't wait to play again. I can't wait to do things next time. So it's definitely something that's been building up, and I think I got really good bones for this system. I think it's just about fleshing everything else out, and
yeah,
it's genuinely super fun. So I'm glad we started doing this, and I hope we get to really dig in and like develop a lot of it, because I feel like the system really does have a lot of potential.
Yeah, like I'm bummed I missed it, because like it doesn't help. I figured out more of the style of what I want my character to be, because I had a very basic thing, and then I'm like, oh, I've developed it. I kind of understand what like the exact vision, like vibe I want of this dude, and then I couldn't communicate it. And I was like, no.
Right. Yeah.
I went back because I kept seeing TikToks of it. I started watching my favorite show, Psych.
Right.
And
I love
the
Psych.
show that it's so good, and it really keeps hitting me how much as like a young man I completely absorbed from the main character, Sean Spencer.
Right.
Like if you've played tabletop with me, that's not a crazy statement. And it helps. I think that the show is just actually well written. There's a lot of surprising depth to the characters there. And this is also because the characters also I used to play was inspired by him as well. Like literally one of my first tabletop characters I played with this group. Good old Garvey. This is kind of a redux of some similar themes and like concepts. But I just really like the idea of the stealthy, like charismatic criminal who, instead of like being sneaky, hiding in the shadows, is just walking places very confidently. Just kind of like talking his way past certain areas because he just knows a guy there, or like he just put on a coat and he's like, oh, like, hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. And they're like, oh, good morning, and just like don't process that this is a stranger who just broke in.
Yeah, social subterfuge.
And the abilities I was talking to you about with my background stuff, I found 2 of them that fit in both stealth and manipulation. And I was like, perfect, I can hit this theme.
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits for you guys is I get to develop the system kind of around your preferences and your wants and likes. So, like, you get to have a game almost tailored to you that then might get released to a grander public at some point.
I also am of the opinion, and I think that this system can, I mean, it can hit basically all of these things and more, but like, a genuine thing I see missing from a lot of tabletop games is that concept of like social stealth.
Right, yeah.
Because that like there's more aspects to sneaking than like, oh, I'm dodging through the shadows. And like GMs can run it different ways, I guess. But that's usually the default. Stealth and the stealth abilities for games are very like, let me Skyrim crouch and no one can see me. Instead of like, yeah, what if you're just walking through locations with a pissed off enough expression and a very nice like coat, and like you're dressed super expensively, so then people are like, oh shit, that's like a noble at this party walking through, I'm not gonna bother him as a servant.
Yeah,
have all those elements.
That's why I love, like, that's why I rated Alter Ego, the archetype dedication, and Pathfinder so high, is it's that same concept of you watch someone perform a job for like a day or something like that, and then you can essentially adopt that position in whatever you're doing. You know, like you watch dock worker, you then can mimic perfectly how a dock worker would act, and even gain like the ability to do some of their tasks with some level of proficiency and everything like that. It's a really great idea, and I think it's one of the things that, like, tabletop is a spectrum of ability and narrative ability, creativity, and just overall like role-playing competence. And so it can be hard to find games that you can really utilize these kind of ideas or tactics, because either the system doesn't support it and thus you have to rely on the GM to do it, or your GM is unable to adapt to how you approach a situation. And so it becomes a very basic, like, okay, I like what you did. You succeeded the check. Good. Move forward, rather than anything more mechanically interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, there's so many, I think, scenes and cinematic moments you can describe from movies, and then like you want to play it out in a game where you have that sequence of like, all right, we're breaking into a secret medical lab. Okay, you slip in through a back door, you sneak into a closet, you grab a uniform, you wear it, you keep moving to your location, slip through another door, change clothes again. You're like being all talkative and not hiding. It's just, or even there's the tactics you in real life. Like I feel like I'm pretty good at the 2 things. I can make myself like not stand out. I'm just, you'll not pay attention to me because I do not want to be spoken to. That's what happens when you grow up near Seattle. And the other one is walk through places confidently enough that no one stops you. I have done that. Both I have accidentally trespassed, and because I just walk through places with enough confidence, I've not stopped. It's a real thing. If you just look like you know what you're doing, most of the time people are not going to question it unless it is their job to question it.
Yeah, and like what I want to do with the system as well is I want to create those kind of cinematic moments and those kind of things by just having a variety of skills that, while inherently don't necessarily lead into a thing, can definitely be a part of it. The first heist you guys did was very interesting because you used your parkour skill to climb up to a camera like super easy. And that was something that, like, you could do in other tabletop games, but you wouldn't be necessarily thinking about it. You'd be like, there's a camera up there. Can I climb up there? Sure. Make a climb check, whatever. But with this is like, here's a parkour skill. And it's like, oh, I know what I can do. I'm going to use my parkour to get up to that camera, you know? And it's like, it's so much more interesting. It's so much more fascinating. And then there was the whole drilling through the window security thing. And then I really like the devil deal part of the game where I just offer, you know, hey, something bad can happen right now. It always changes things up and makes things more dynamic and makes the players like have a hard time choosing on getting like a little bit of a reward and that kind of like interesting aspect, or making sure things don't go as wrong as they can go. And the system, I feel like, has really just been lending itself very easily to creating interesting narrative moments that don't rely on the player or the GMs to like have to actively create that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I want more tabletop to do. I want tabletop to allow players to just kind of do things or have inclinations that have more of a cinematic feel to it, you know? Like, rather than having a climbing skill, we have a parkour skill, which just sounds more interesting.
And, like, yeah, climbing is part of it. And it all, I feel like the best thing it gets around is the times where there's like, all right, there's acrobatics and athletics, and then people are always going to try to fight for the thing they want. When like a lot of times when a player really digs deep into one of those, they want both. It's like, I want to be able to climb, jump, free run. I want all that shit. So making it just one kind of like balloon skill.
Well, I mean, it has the other ones as well. It's just like, it's a different, more specific expression in a way that people can very tangibly grab, because we know what parkour is, for instance.
Mm-hmm. The way I think of it is, I'm sub to one of the better rock climbers in the world, Magnus something. And one of the things he does is he'll find like other people who are top fitness in their field, and it's people's like, hey, this is the best power lifter in the world. Their actual like lift strength and their arm strength is insane. And then he'll like, all right, let's see, does this apply in progress to climbing? And a lot of times for these people, they're like ripped, just so much like upper body strength, they can like do half of it really well. There's just the element of lifting yourself where you're like, that part easy as fuck. Actually like progressing up something much harder. And I think that transfers really well to the concept of athletics and parkour, like those kind of skills. It's like, yeah, sure, you're very athletic. You can probably climb something. You're not going to do it as well as a guy who literally trains climbing.
Yeah. And that's kind of why, like, it's one of those things where I don't like how there's a lot of tabletops out there that, like, we like to simplify the system. So we have more, like, single catch-all skills for everything in this area, for making it more intuitive or, like, easier to understand, I guess. And I always disagree with that idea, because I feel like that, one, it forces players to be more creative and be more imaginative, and that's just not a skill that everyone has in like equal amounts. And in addition to that, it really removes a lot of the actual like detail that makes narratives interesting. You don't want a book to kind of hand wave over a lot of things, you know. If you're reading a book about an individual breaking into a house, right, what would sound more interesting? One moment the character's outside of the house, and then the narrator says they broke into the house with deft skill and soon they were within its corridors, you know. Or would you prefer to read something like he takes out his tools and he begins finessing one of the locks, or Jimmy's like a thin shiv underneath one of the windows and cracks it open just a bit, using, you know, like various tools and descriptions and stuff like that. Does it take longer? Yes, but do I get a better understanding of the character's skill and ability and like the actual depth of what's happening? Yes, and it makes you appreciate that more. So
yeah, literally the only time you'd want like the former is if I don't know, it's like the third break-in a row, and it's like,
right.
okay, this is gonna be the exact same scenario, which is then where you can have elements of the floor of failure, where it's like, yeah, your character is trained at this, like breaking into a house and not crazy, breaking into like a lord's manor. Okay, that needs a little bit more detailing. Let's get a bit more granular.
Yeah.
How skilled are you? Where that's where you can make that separation, just like a book would do.
Right, exactly. And you know, I think that's something that like people will innately do. You don't need the book to tell you to like shoelace things that you've done already that are super repetitive. People just do it because people don't like doing things like over and over and over that seem kind of mundane or seem very like unfun. People don't like that
Me
kind of
as
stuff.
fuck. Fully me. I do not like it when something becomes super repetitive or feels like it's being done for the sake of doing it rather than like progressing the game or enjoyment.
Yeah. Which actually, that's also a very interesting conversation when it comes to how things like limited ammo and things can serve a purpose, but shouldn't always be like a thing you have to worry about.
There are times in a scenario where it makes sense, and I think you can make a really strong narrative. I would not willingly join a game where a lot of that's being like emphasized, but if there was like an arc, like a survival arc, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
I would fuck with that because there's purpose. If like all it is a like 20-minute roadblock of conversation, mostly out of table, every time we go to like a key location and then we travel, I don't care. I start to zone out because like there's no functional difference from me participating in a shopping episode to get all the rations and ammo I need between that or saying you spent 5 rations in the travel, please deduct 10 gold. Like there's no functional difference from that.
Yeah.
That's where my hang up always is like, is there a better method that speeds something up, or are we doing this because like the book says so in someone's opinion, therefore we must waste time when we could be having fun role playing, doing combat, doing gameplay? Like that's always my take.
Yeah, well, you know, and what's super funny about that as well is Monster Hunter has kind of done some of this, where early Monster Hunter, the gimmick was monster hunting, but with a sense of realism attached to it. So, like whetstones for sharpening your weapons and everything like that, you had to go out and mine whetstones. You didn't have an infinite whetstone, essentially. For your food, for your rations, you had to go out and hunt and cook the meats in order to have rations. There's a lot of things, like you used to have to paintball monsters so that when they went to a different zone, you could track them easier. There's just a lot of things that have been completely removed because the point of the game is monster hunting. It's not realism hunter, you know? So the developers have understood this and over time have slowly just kind of removed those elements. They exist. You can still, well, you can't mine whetstones anymore, but you can still like get meat and cook it yourself and have well done steak, you know, instead of your rations and all that kind of stuff. But they've understood that like not making that a core part of the game where you just have these kind of tedious tasks for every hunt makes the game more enjoyable.
Agreed. Like if anything, I think you could make a Monster Hunter game, because now that we've kind of progressed past the point of needing the load zones for every zone, because like I played a bit of Generations Ultimate, other than the fact that for some reason my skills in every other Monster Hunter game I've played doesn't transfer for some reason. I'm just real bad, and none of the weapons I like feel the same because the moves are different. But like the whole load zone bit and then finding the monster, I'm not a fan. But like if we had the one continuous level I think hunting the monster, like kind of like Worlds did, is kind of fun. I think you can have that part, but I'm a big fan of the lack of friction that's been included in Monster Hunter.
Yeah. But about enough time has come, and we were kind of talking about the 333. So now's a really good time to kind of switch to the main topic. So, the new era of TTRPGs. I feel like this isn't necessarily a tired conversation, even though I'm sure probably some people have made mention of something similar before. But we are now like literally on the doorstep of the next few months. Hi, James. We're going to be getting a new, pretty big TTRPG, like relatively marketed for, like well marketed for TTRPGs anyway. Because Daggerheart comes out May 20th. Starfinder is already starting to spin up its wheels, getting ready for its major release here. We also
Very
got
excited.
the Technomancer playtest.
Yeah, I gotta like dig through that. I haven't had the chance to.
Me neither, trust me. And that's coming out in July and August, I believe, sometime in that range. Also, backers of the Cosmere RPG are going to get their PDFs in July. They are currently postponing physical book release for after the tariffs. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Which is unfortunate. And if you're not living in the US, it's you might get your books on time, but if you live in the US, sucks to be us, I suppose, which it really, really does.
I'm not surprised, but man.
And let's see, when does, I know Draw Steel is PDFs for Draw Steel should be coming in June, it looks like. This is the D&D but better, designed by Matt Colville. So if you're interested in something like that, that's coming up here soon. And then let's see, DC 20.
Honestly, I've seen literally nothing about Draw Steel. I am curious how it's gonna be D&D but better.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Colville has been a pretty big like face in the D&D sphere for a while, until, you know, kind of falling off, as many content creators have. And let's see, what is Draw Steel or DC 20 looking like? Updates. Right now, they recently have done the 0.9, so they're getting real close. Oh, I guess they're not doing a 1.0, I guess. I guess they're still working on it. Huh, interesting. So maybe that's, I don't know, I haven't been keeping up on that, but that's also another D&D but better. They're just systems. I know a Draw Steel, for instance. Matt Colville, someone mentioned it last time. We ended up having a little bit of an argument on stream about the idea. But Matt Colville's idea is tabletop should be an action movie. Should be cinematic and should feel like very immersive, very narratively interesting and impactful and everything like that. I argue that not every TTRPG needs to be an action movie. I feel like there's a wide variety of TTRPGs that shouldn't be an action movie. But for like things like Dungeons and Dragons, you know, the medieval high fantasy style stuff, yeah, sure, I can agree. Not every moment, but like I think overall as the premise, sure.
Well, at least just reading the backer kit, I understand the like what they're trying to go for. It doesn't feel as much as like, let's make every single thing an action movie, but it's at least the intent is making combat, as they put it, not a slog. So you're not missing turns, you're not like burning resources that do nothing. Everything will happen. It seems like it's just you're gaining resources and being able to do better things, and something's just more effective. It's like, all right, that is a big issue with D&D. Also, I like the fact that the game is a 2d6 system. So that's something. Immediately means it's better than D&D.
Yeah. I don't think the last Darrington Press email I received didn't mention anything like that, so I haven't seen anything. I'm sure they will be working on another thing though. The Critical Role cast has kind of just developed into a TTRPG based organization at this point, so I don't think they're going to stop releasing anything anytime soon. But Daggerheart will be coming out soon, and it's going to be like the flagship for everything coming in the next coming months. And also, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but content creators being sick of D&D, XP to level 3 has come out with more Pathfinder content and has just constantly been like, I like Pathfinder. I think more people should play Pathfinder.
Yeah, it's nice to see. I saw that he posted that just going over some of the crazy spells in Pathfinder.
Yeah,
which that's good content. That's how you hit it. You're just like, what the fuck are these spells? Because they're insane, dude. He's got to look at the Starfinder spells though. Those spells are nuts.
Yeah, and it's good. And the thing is, yeah, to be fair, I think there's only one channel that's really even hitting the archetypes. Not in the same context, but still.
It isn't just it's if you need to make a video that's like, hey, like people are just aware of tabletop games. You know that the games have spells. You might have seen like D&D spells. Here's another game's spell system that has enough familiar mechanics that you can understand what they're doing. And like, here's how fun and crazy they are. That's such good entry-level content.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Jacob's always been really, really good about like being a channel where casual like fans can interact with it or like see it without getting too deep in. And he's obviously super passionate about tabletop and everything like that. So, yeah, as far as like D&D content creators are concerned, I don't think there's anyone better than Jacob for like introducing new people to Pathfinder, especially on the more casual end.
He was literally one of my early introductions.
So, it's something that we're seeing in, honestly, like, it's crazy. But D&D 2024, despite being objectively like a more tuned up D&D 5, it feels like after it came out, any momentum D&D has just vanished. It's gone. No one is excited for D&D products anymore. Not even the content creators, not even the fans. Thank you, Sir Banto, for the follow. We appreciate you. It'll probably show up here in a moment. Yep, there it is. I gotta change that still. It's still on that. I blame mostly the marketing for the game for that. I don't. I blame Wizards of the Coast for not developing actually sixth edition. Actually making a good game. They just re-released the same game, only barely changed. And it's like sad.
I know why, because of like the answer to the thing I'm about to say. I understand why they didn't. I saw my theories, but like I feel like it would have landed a lot better if they did two things. They're like, hey guys, here's a big errata to D&D 5th edition and D&D 6th edition. You can do both at the same time, because like you just updating how the general game works, like trying, at least in their attempts to uplift everything to be equal and balanced. That doesn't take as much resources as like an entire game release, but that sounds like something you can kind of do easily, especially since this is like a core reprint of Tasha.
Right, kind of, yeah. What do you even call? I mean, they have a name for it. It's just no one knows what it means, and the ideas and principles behind it that they were talking about and espousing before, like, hey, we're making a forever D&D. We're making a D&D that is, you know, editionless, more or less, which is the dumbest thing ever to say. What do you mean editionless, you know?
More and more, I'm validated in my theory that I think Hasbro believes the general tabletop audience is too stupid to know what an edition means.
Right. And the thing is, when was the last interesting book for D&D players? Tasha's. That's it. Like, yeah, sure, maybe there's some of the adventure paths are cool, some of the other little things here and there are pretty interesting, but like a new book full of player material, full of things to make your games more interesting, more lively, and that's the thing, right? Not just, hey, we're releasing this thing that you has some player stuff in it, you know, or whatever. It's just disappointing, and you can tell, you can see it in the community. People still like D&D. This is not me saying D&D is bad. It is bad, but it's not me saying it. This is D&D players deserved better. They deserved more new stuff. They deserved the game they like getting attention, not a Minecraft mod, not
Yeah.
marketing like toys and plushies and stuff like that. They deserved a better game. They deserved more. They deserved something interesting. Hey, thanks, Sagehog, or Sagehog, for the follow. We appreciate you. And it sucks. Well, Pathfinder is winning all the time. New stuff, new books, new classes, new everything, just every so many months. It's really, really good. We have a free website that you can go, no D&D Beyond bullshit. And now we have Starfinder coming out for people who are interested in another type of fantasy genre. It's sci-fi, science fiction fantasy, but like it's got that same feel and blood, and you can tell. This is kind of one of the feelings I have, that I don't think people are necessarily purely married to the idea of medieval fantasy. I think people just like fantasy. It's just we don't have a lot of expression of fantasy outside of medieval fantasy style stuff, like Tolkien-esque style. Because when you do sci-fi, it tends to have a very different feel to it, you know? Where I think high fantasy can exist in many different themes and genres and everything like that outside of medieval, you know, Tolkien-esque. So
there's also a growing thing where like as that's been changing, because there's a lot of new like books and just anything that's trying to deviate farther and farther from like typical sci-fi and typical fantasy, especially like just the Western concepts of it, where it seems like the borders of what makes a sci-fi and a fantasy is like kind of degrading, because I've seen a lot of things where it's like, this is a fantasy. It's like not medieval fantasy, but it is fantasy. Or sci-fi fantasy becoming a much larger element. I know I've been recommended a few books like through my YouTube stuff where people are saying like, yeah, this is like a sci-fi, it's as it's in the future, but it doesn't feel like a sci-fi. I'm like, I know what you mean.
yeah.
But man, like that, I think it's interesting. We might go down that path of the genres melding and kind of blending a bit.
Yeah, well, you know, and honestly, I think people just want more stuff, you know? People get tired of playing the same type of games over and over and over again. Variety is the spice of life. Am I saying medieval fantasy should go away? No, of course not. I'm saying we need bigger titles that do more things, you know? I think Starfinder 2e is going to be just that. It's got the fantasy feel to it in a sci-fi setting, and it's got weird little guys. It's got all kinds of fun, goofy stuff. It's got high impact magic. It's got high impact action. And I think that's what people want, you know? I think there's a lot of people who associate the idea of sci-fi with like Star Trek or Star Wars, you know?
Yeah.
And while I think those types of the parts of the genre are also very legitimate, people want something that has a little bit more panache, more flair, more impact, you know? They want the feeling of like anime or like high fantasy in those settings too. And Star Trek is definitely not that, and Star Wars is marginally more that, you know?
Exactly. And like there's always going to be that soft spot for certain types of fantasy stuff, because you know as much as you can shit on the games, and I think you should, because there's a lot of issues. The Elder Scrolls has a very specific feeling to
Yeah.
it. Like, it's probably the most like, this is not fully Tolkien, because once you go past the surface level, it's just super different. But like, there's just a vibe that world has that feels really like interesting. I think it's just because a lot of the like lore takes itself very seriously, and there actually is really cool lore once you dig past like the surface level of it, and like there's a feeling of it, and I will be sad if there is no more Elder Scrolls stuff, but like I also on the other hand want to see fantasy that kind of goes into fun different directions, because that would get boring really really fast.
Right.
But
yeah.
I like Sanderson's approach to it. I like that he is making fantasy books where one of the big inspirations for like the Stormlight archive was Dune.
Right. Exactly. Which is very obvious to tell with the theming and the almost the dry aridness of a lot of parts of Roshar and everything like that.
The landscape itself is like a threat you have to deal with.
Yeah.
It is a character. Like, both of those are elements of Dune.
Which, you know, that's something that I truly believe. I was saying it last year. I was saying it the year before, that there's going to be a time where tabletop's really going to start like shifting and changing up, because we got a lot of big titles on the horizon. People are going to get tired of D&D, and guess what? I was fucking right.
Yeah.
People got tired of D&D. Who knew? Who knew a game that is being run by several hamsters on wheels was going to peter out eventually, you know, and those poor little developers. And who knew that the tabletop community, which is bigger than it's ever been before, is filled with so many different creative voices and people of interest, is going to start evolving and adapting away from D&D, which, you know what? We are. We're starting to see new forms. Like Daggerheart does feel very D&D, but mechanically speaking and a lot of the vibe we're talking about is not D&D. It's very intrinsically not D&D. And Pathfinder has its roots in D&D, but with many of its new things that it's coming out with, it's definitely starting to separate itself. Starfinder being a really good example of like, all right, hey, let's just do space D&D but better, you know.
Yeah.
We have, you know, Matt Colville coming out making his own rendition of the tabletop system. We had the Cosmere RPG, which is a whole new fantasy take and genre, coming in with some very great systems, some systems with narrative crunch that I absolutely love. And, you know, maybe the 333 might come out a little after all these and give a new type of genre for people who are interested in the whole, like, imagine Sherlock Holmes but with steampunk and Eldritch horror, you know.
Yeah,
I think that's a very interesting idea, and I think that's something that a lot of people would be interested in. And in general, I think we're going to start seeing people just advocating more and more for variety tabletop. And tabletop is just, it's going to experience its whale fall. It's already kind of experiencing the whale fall. We're starting to see the first elements of it, as we're seeing like Jacob, you know, from XP to level 3, starting to talk more about like Pathfinder and stuff like that. And we're starting to see other games get more notoriety. We're starting to see things like Daggerheart and everything like that. And I do honestly believe many casual enjoyers of the hobby are becoming more and more generally interested in tabletop in general, not just D&D, not just the idea of D&D, you know? Like, I don't think the medieval fantasy is going to go away, nor do I ever think it's going to be less than the main niche. I think it always will be. But I do think the idea of tabletop is going to no longer be stuck by the whole Band-Aid thing of D&D. And I think people are going to start knowing more and more what D&D is actually about, or what tabletop is actually about.
The big goal, I think, is to also get people into the idea of having multiple games and like learning it. Because a lot of like, if you understand tabletop games, once you like cross that threshold of like just wrapping your head around what it even is, like when you're first starting out, because that is a big hurdle I've helped people through. Like once you get past that point and you get invested, a lot of the games aren't that hard once you've like know the general concepts and the things you need to know for a tabletop game. So it's just getting people comfortable with playing variety. And like maybe your group's not having giant years long campaigns. You're having like maybe a couple campaigns in the span of a year. Like that is a thing I could see people getting more comfortable with.
I like the 10 session like mini campaign idea. I think if we normalize that, I think a lot more people will be interested in tabletop in general because it's just more achievable in general.
It's way more achievable. There is always going to be the part of me that does like having those longer games because I think there's just elements where you can play out a character and they need a story that's going to last a little longer.
Yeah.
Like I always will like that the campaigns that do last like maybe half a year. Maybe they do even last a year. That's a really good game. Like that hits. But like not every game needs to be that. Sometimes you can like end a big campaign and be like, hey, let's do like a couple shorter games, try out some other systems before we like decide on one to stick with for a longer time.
Yeah,
that feels healthy.
And it's just the thing in general. People should just have more spice and variety, and also I also feel that people are just develop better characters the more characters they make and play for a decent amount of time. So I think the whole multi-year long campaign idea is kind of toxic for tabletop because your character is probably not worthy of such a game unless you've been doing it for a while, unless you've been playing a few, shorter campaigns. And like, while it's fun and while people definitely have had fun with it, I'm not saying that's not the case. I feel like people would have an overall better experience if they took tabletop more piecemeal than trying to take a whole chunk of it at a time,
And like, if anything, I feel like a really solid idea is if you're doing shorter games and then like the stars align and you find the game and like you finish 10 sessions and everyone's like, I don't want to leave this. Like, there's more story we can tell. There's just more stuff we want to do. Then, yeah, continue it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, and that's kind of the fun thing about the 10 sessioners is 10 to 15 sessions. If at the end of that, your group is like, can we just keep playing? Then, you probably should keep playing at least a little bit longer at the very least. But if
give it like 10 more sessions or something.
Yeah, but if you get to the end of it and you're like, that was fun, that was good, like our Vampire the Masquerade game, I liked it. I liked the characters a lot. I think it was really, really fun. But I feel pretty content after our 10, I think it was like 12 or 13 sessions.
Yeah, there's like the extent where you're like, all right, we can move on to something different. Because like, I still in the back of my head have like a bunch of different like World of Darkness Chronicle ideas, something that have been pooled together into one area of my version of Seattle. And like the whole concept that can be built out from like a vampire game, then we play a bit of hunter, then we play a bit of mage. Like, that's workable. I don't want to take the effort in doing that because there's like 3 other games I'd care about more, like first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even saying necessarily like ditch a system, but like developing characters, developing methods of play. Like, honestly, one of the worst things is Pathfinder is such a fun game, but sometimes a class can look way more fun on the outside than it is to actually play. And so you get into it a little bit and then you're like, oh, kind of want to try something else, And that's also just another thing. Like, Pathfinder's a really good game, but sometimes I feel like you can get stuck in a class you don't like playing that much. It just happens. And
yeah, it's happened to me. I think it's definitely happened to like most people who've played a tabletop game.
Yeah. So, it's like shorter campaigns, shorter overall like bites of tabletop are just, you know, not as burdensome on people's schedules. It allows you to test a game, test character ideas, test all kinds of things in a much better way. And then when the stars align and everyone has a really baller character and you're about to set up for something good, you know, like Plague Watch only came about because I felt like we played enough Pathfinder that I could rely on everyone to play a good character for a longer campaign. And while that's been temporarily put on hold because we have a baby, and so one of the players just is not super capable of playing at this time, it's something that like we built up to over the course of like a few years, you know. With
and
many
I'm
short
very
campaigns.
Excited for like a longer Pathfinder game, like to sink my teeth into a character and like a world, especially not like a Pathfinder world, basically. Yeah. Like I'm excited. I'm also helps that I get to play a class that looks genuinely sick.
Yeah. So, you know, this all kind of just wraps back around to D&D being the monolith it was helpful for what it was meant to be, which is the touchstone for tabletop for a lot of people. You know, you play some D&D, you kind of know what tabletop's about in one way or another. And since D&D, especially in the casual scene, has this very kind of lighthearted, like, I'm just playing a goofy character, I'm just playing, you know, Joe Bama Jamma, who is a ooze morph who, you know, jumps into people's bodies and explodes them from the inside, who's also a psychic and also a rogue, you know. Stuff like that is really interesting, and it's like, man, people are like, oh, you can do that? You can make a character like that? That's a thing? And when people get into it and they start touching it and seeing what it's all about, then they can be like, well, it's either one, you remain a casual and you just enjoy it the sparse amount of times you actually ever engage with it, or you get hooked and you start being like, okay, what else can I do? What other things, you know, is this my new obsession? And then, you know, people get into the hobby. Like, I think tabletop is really fun. I think tabletop is something that, while, you know, is a bit more intensive than a lot of other styles of like gaming, quote unquote, I don't think it's any less valuable than like video games.
Yeah.
So with the whale fall that is D&D kind of just dying out, I think we're going to enter an era where, sure, maybe we're not going to hit the same height that tabletop has been, but we're going to hit a very good medium, like bigger than it ever was, but not the biggest it's ever been. But everyone is trying new things, everyone is happy, and everyone is getting hyped and excited for their own fantasy games. And in 10 years' time, I can only imagine the sheer number of crazy, new, interesting TTRPGs that are going to exist because people got hooked on D&D, wanted to make their own game, their own world, their own setting, and now we're playing, you know, interesting, like, Bloodborne, but TTRPG-style games with all those mechanics that feels really good, you know, or heck, even Expedition 33 with its kind of unique, warped fantasy France kind of aesthetics and everything like that, with its Lumina tech that allows you to essentially do magic, you know, and all kinds of things. Like, that's one of the reasons why I'm developing my game based loosely on Lore of the Mysteries, a very popular and very well-known Chinese web novel. And it's just the idea of that's been toyed around with quite a lot, which is just fantasy, like turn of the century England, you know, like Jack the Ripper but a monster, Sherlock Holmes, but he has magical abilities, very Dresden Files-esque, you know. I think that there's a lot of value in that kind of stuff, and I want to see bigger and bigger forms of that media exist in a way that's more accessible. I want to go to game stores and be spoiled for choice on what new games to try, okay? Like, this is for me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, every kind of push in a field, in a hobby you care about, it should be somewhat selfish, because you just want to engage with more stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm genuinely excited for what, like, design iterations people are going to come up with. Like, is there a dice system 10 years down the line we're all going to be kicking ourselves over for not thinking of first?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with the 333, by the way, this is a big 3 year for me, because I'm 33 currently. Expedition 33 just came out.
Shit.
And I'm developing the game 333. So. Three. I lost track. Three consumed everything. But I like already the 333. I like a dice system that is less about hoping to not get a failure. Instead, it's about pushing to see how far you can go, you know? With a skill floor ceiling or a skill floor based dice system rather than a skill ceiling based dice system, I feel like it allows players to interact it in a more enjoyable way, where you're not having feel bad moments as much of like, I didn't make the check. And instead, it's just like, okay, I know I can do this thing, and I know this thing is kind of outside of my like ability to reach, but I'm going to try it anyway just in case. But my character still feels competent, still feels capable, even if I don't succeed that check, for instance. Because I hate making a character in tabletop who is specifically designed to do a certain thing really well. It's a part of their narrative, it's a part of their story. I'm role-playing like a god, and then the dice fuck me, and my character just fails or gets made a mockery of because of the failure. You know, it's like crit fail. Well, your super suave, interesting character just comes up to someone and says, "Hey, nice cock," and then walks away in shame, you know? Like, it's something that just, I hate it with a fiery passion, because it just ruins moments, it ruins characters, and it makes narratives harder to do, you know? I feel like characters should just have things they're good at.
While there's equally the beauty of insane swingy luck progressing a narrative in a natural way, sometimes it's like there are moments where like the whole table can just be like, I kind of wish that just succeeded. You had a good chance to, but no, nat one. And,
honestly,
you know, there's times where it can hit both ways, but I feel like there's a difference between very swingy like luck systems, between like there's a degree of failure that can occur that's realistic.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think failure should be things where your characters are intentionally reaching outside of their skill sets. That's the realistic part.
Yeah, there's degrees where, like, yeah, of course, this character is like, they're trying to do something a little farther. This has a reason to not be kind of hand waved. That makes more sense, because that's just a narrative thing. Like, that's what you do in a narrative. You establish that a character can do a thing, and then boom, you don't need to show the basic level of that anymore. That is pure shoelacing. That's how you edit it out. It's very important. But like, that's gonna like a consistent good thing, I think do. And it's something that I feel like you can do even in every game. It just determines like the GM, because D&D has a tendency to really be like the meme of, all right, I take a step forward, make an acrobatics check.
Right.
Like that kind of game where every action dictates it, when then you gotta learn, no, most actions you shouldn't have to roll. Yeah, especially with a system where most checks are basically a 50-50.
And I feel like having a game that just lets players do a thing, like the Cosme or even their specialty system, I think can teach players that kind of innate shoelacing, because it's just something that's like, okay, hey, you're good at this thing, cool, do it. tell me the story. You know, don't worry about failing. That lets players have that freedom, and also kind of shows that, like, yeah, if your character's supposed to be really good at a thing, don't worry about rolling it. That's kind of dumb. Only roll when your character's like reaching. And also, like, I feel like the swinginess that people talk about, the people who absolutely love nat 1s and nat 20s because how they can change a scene and be super dynamic and everything like that because it's random. You know what? I think plot die does it better.
Yeah.
I think
I like Pathfinder's system with like 10 above, 10 below is a crit, because then it feels like you know, that's an expression of skill. It still like can be largely luck based and very swingy, but at least with Pathfinder, like the skill floor is like way lower, and like you can, if you're really good at lock picking, there's a good chance that you are going to break a very easy lock, even if you roll like a nat 1. Because like just your bonus is that high and the base check is just that low.
Yeah.
That's like a method you can do it, but like then if your character's so skilled, it's like, oh yeah, you got 10 over. Yeah, this is easy. You've done this before.
Alex, do your job.
Oh, no.
I like the plot die. I think the plot die is a better expression of the swinginess in a way that's less obtrusive. Because rather than making characters just, you know, like requiring a failure for something interesting to happen or just a maximum success, I like the idea of the plot die where it's like, hey, something good happens even if you didn't succeed, or something bad happens but you very likely succeeded the check. That makes things more interesting. It makes things more dynamic, and it kind of adds balance to both of the ends of the spectrum that I think really makes it more fun and more engaging. I think the D20 has outlived its general purpose because, to be fair, the D20 was designed around a much more numbers heavy, intensive mass, like number calculated based game. Like, it works for Pathfinder 2nd edition. I don't think it works for D&D 5e though, because the math just doesn't back up how the dice works.
Yeah, like the average modifier for most of the game being like a 3 or a 4. Like that's just, I don't know, that's not a lot for a D20.
Right.
Like that's just, it's a big like difficult game for some things where it's just, all right, now we got to calculate probability and the math of average checks, and some games do it way better. And like succeeding more often, I feel like isn't a bad thing to give like to your players on a rule lens. It's like you're just going to succeed at things you're good at more often and fail at the things you're good at less often. Like I don't think it's a bad thing. I do also, yeah, the plot dice I think hits it the best. I think you're right. The only other game that I think hits it better is because it's my favorite dice system, the Edge of the Empire, a Star Wars one. And you know what? It's literally just a more complicated plot dice. So it's still the same concept.
Yeah. You know, actually, this is an interesting question, and I encourage the audience here to engage with this as well. What do you think is like an acceptable level of failure when it comes to like a variety of different things? Because I think it varies depending on different circumstances. But like, how much failure do you think a character should or would be best if a character should experience in like a given session?
It's an interesting thing to try to think and like quantify on. Because I know, at least on a feeling wise, I just need to feel like I have done something. Like I need to feel like my presence at the table impacted something. Because that's always my biggest feel bad, where I'm like, man, the thing I contributed would be literally the exact same as if I called out of the session.
Right.
Because that feels bad, and that sucks. So like, if I feel like my presence achieved a part of the game, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I like James here. Depends on how high the stakes are. I feel like if I'm failing basic stuff over and over, I can probably shake it off, but it'll suck. If it's like a major thing and I fail, I probably will feel worse. Interesting. That's actually, I would say it would be the opposite It also depends on the number of successes and balance with it. That's also true. I mean, obviously, James here being insightful, being someone who helps design and develop content, third-party content. But like, we can dive into that a little bit more. So because in all probability, in all likelihood, even your worst sessions, you did succeed at least like a few things, right? So obviously that it's not just like, you're never going to fail every single check, right? So how do you think, like, what kinds of things do you think your character should succeed at or fail at?
Having like been through some of those sessions, like sometimes even if you look at it objectively and you're like, okay, throughout the session I did these checks, I failed most of them, but there were like these ones I succeeded. I picked the lock of a guy's house. It wasn't a crazy lock, so I was able to pick it. I succeeded a stealth check from a guard who wasn't paying attention. Like those kind of stakes where it's like, this is a nothing burger.
Right.
Where sometimes those accumulate and you're just like, I succeeded at the stuff that was pretty basic and easy, like occasionally, but everything that mattered I failed at. Like that doesn't feel great. And even when it's like, I succeeded at the stuff I failed at, that's specifically my character's role to fulfill.
Ah, yes. Okay. See, now that's exactly why I like the idea of just let players do succeed at the things they're good at, you know? I love having you here, Alex, because it's always a very interesting thing of balancing, like, okay, how's the feel of this particular thing, this particular idea, concept, or whatever, versus like the practicality, and watching you kind of like adjust your perspective based on the different perspectives that come about. Because when I say a lot of players should just be able to do things, just be able to succeed at things they're supposed to be good at, I think in a lot of people that triggers this sensation of like, well, I want dice rolls to matter. You know, they get this knee-jerk reaction of like, whoa, we still want to roll dice, right? Don't just let players just auto win through the game. It's not what I'm saying. It's more of like, what makes the specialty system and the Cosmere RPG feel really good is it's very niche. It's very specific to the types of things like you're auto succeeding, right? So in an overall game session, if what you're good at comes up, you're going to succeed, and that's going to feel good, so that even if you fail a lot of things that you're not as good at, you're going to feel like you still matter because your role is always going to be there, because you're going to essentially always succeed at the thing you're always going to be good at, right?
Yeah. Like, I think there's, well, like, I definitely can see the impression that, like, characters should just succeed more, where they can build that. I know exactly what you're talking about with it, because I agree, like, fully. I agree that there needs to be a skill, like, floor that characters just don't do it. I think that an impactful aspect is a auto succeed. I think you should be earned in some way, and by earned, that doesn't even mean through like hard work. That's through character creation. You built out a character and you have like a narrative built around these principles. Therefore, you can then make it a mechanical element of your character too. And so you have like a core couple things that your character will like auto succeed at if it's like normal level basic, like in your character's wheelhouse. That's earned. I think it's very earned. If the extreme that it definitely, this discussion isn't, but like the idea of like, yeah, you can just succeed everything, you just kind of waltz through it all, we're just telling a story. As much as I am like a pure roleplay enjoyer, if the story and the GM and the players are all great, I don't really care what system we're in. I do want to have a game. Like, I want there to be something, because I can just hang out and talk with people whenever. Like, the story is impacted by random chance, and you gotta have those like challenges, which like a system with like a floor ceiling and a floor like a floor skill floor, it's still there. It can still have it, because I think the great line in the sand is when your character is reaching out of their means or in challenging themselves, there should be the risk of failure.
I agree.
Also, yeah, I think there's always the bias, as James is saying, of you're gonna remember the failures. You're like, that's always the element you remember. I think the only time it kind of crosses around is when you have like the clutch wins. When you have those moments of like, against all odds, I succeeded and it made a giant impact. You're gonna remember that. There's a reason why the like, and then I rolled a nat 20. The GM face palmed, and then I could do the cool big thing, and it was like the hypest moment of the session or campaign. That'll always hit very different. It's a weird balance, I think, when you're trying to have it, because I do think tabletop will miss something if there aren't the element of pure luck interceding to like make the story altered in some way. I think that is a core element of tabletop I enjoy. It'll be sad if it's gone. But I also can look at like the idea of the nat 1, nat 20, and be like, this is inherently flawed.
Yeah. Also, that's an interesting idea, Gnarly. You know, it's funny. We actually had a similar conversation like this when it came to the concept of character death and should characters be able to die and everything. It's very interesting to see how this conversation has deviated rather than parallel that particular conversation.
Yeah. There's similar through lines in the discussion, even though like I feel fundamentally different about it. Because I fully stand by my character death takes, but like there is a similarity that I will happily admit, and my stance is different on both aspects.
Sure. No, I'm not here to criticize that. It's more
I didn't imagine you were.
It's more of, because Table Talk here is more of like a tabletop theory chat. You know, we're talking about what makes tabletop interesting, what's happening in tabletop, all that kind of stuff. I find stuff like this incredibly interesting because I think a lot of what you talked about is literally what a lot of tabletop has kind of struggled with for a long time. The idea of let characters build to do certain things, but also like I want to keep that element of, you know, success and failure, keep that tension almost in it. I think it's one of those things where tabletop has developed a way that's become a little safe, where games try to balance, and so characters can't be too good at certain things. They can be better, but not too good. D&D 5e is a really, really good example of this. And it creates these interesting moments, sure, but it also creates, I think, a bigger amount of kind of feel bad moments because of it. You know, you had a really good opportunity to have a great character moment, and you were stopped by bad dice, you know.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
Stuff like that. And I think that happens way more frequently. Like, that's kind of why I'm going to toot my own horn here. Forgive me, but I really have been enjoying designing the 333, because what I like about the game's overall system and mechanics is the better characters get at raises your essentially how poorly you can roll, right? A character who's really good at a thing just doesn't roll bad. That's just how it works. And with how my system does bonuses and stuff, there's a bonus that increases the number you roll on the dice. That doesn't necessarily affect the results, but it doesn't give you the chance of rolling above what your character would normally be capable of doing. I have a bonus that increases your character's proficiency, raising that floor just a little bit. That might not change the result of the check if you just happen to roll higher, but it does give you that safety net. And I have another bonus that increases the overall results, which means no matter what you get, you're going to get a point higher than what you would normally get. And each of these, while seeming kind of similar and kind of having these moments where like they might not matter, reflect different things that's happening in the game. And not only that, but we haven't messed around too much with it because a lot of the stuff you guys have been doing has fallen into the standard basic check range. But when we start getting to checks that have a DC 5, DC 7, DC 9, you are going to have to rely more on luck or more on your specialties, because increasing your skills is going to become progressively harder and harder. So having a specialty is going to be more valuable, where even if you're rolling the same check, like let's say acrobatics, for instance, if you don't have the specialty, you're just not going to be able to do as high of a thing, because this is a system that gives you lots of bonuses that you can stack together to roll crazy high numbers. This is a system that pads the bottom of your dice potential more and more, but it doesn't allow you to necessarily over succeed what your character would be capable of. And what I like about this, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, is the dice system inherently doesn't allow players to kind of like uber cheese the system and make a character who's just super duper good at like a particular set of things because they have a billion bonuses. But simultaneously, it doesn't allow the character to fail overly at something that they have put a lot of time and effort into getting the right talents for, the right skill proficiency and everything like that. And when we start getting to the more difficult actions, you guys are going to really see where your characters like work and effort have come through, because you're going to only be capable of doing certain types of things, or at least you're going to need to rely on some very finicky luck. And it's going to have those hype moments of, you're like, all right, I need to roll like an 8 on this die. You know, it's not about bonuses. It's just, I need to roll an 8 on this D8 or a D10 or whatever, you know. No amount of bonuses can really help with this. So I'm reaching, but let's see what we got, you know. And I want to see more dice ideas and mechanics that revolve around this, rather than the kind of basic just math dice we've been using, where it's all about like probability, and it's all about like, well, there's always a probability of failure. Like a probability of failure, sure, I guess, but what does that serve? What does that probability of failure actually serve? I think we should look at that more closely. How does failure actually affect the game? And let's try to enhance that aspect of it.
I think it's the balance, when it comes down to it, of trying to get, I guess, like the sense of you achieved something. You did something really, really cool. I think is a weird balance of it. Because like you compare it to something like a video game, where you have those moments where you achieve something through the act of skill and like becoming better at something that is then expressed. And then in tabletop, it takes a little extra push to like, yeah, you achieve something, when at the end of the day, you're adding a number to a number and seeing if it works. Like there's those elements of, I think, the work to find how to build the maximum amount of satisfaction from something in a tabletop game. And I'm curious if we'll have any more developments in the future on how, because like it's the thing we always talk about of tabletops in video games. Like there should be I guess an equivalency. I think people can view it like tabletop games like you would a big video game library. You can swap around, you can have fun with it. Like there's no reason these should be like separate, really. But there is like a feel difference that is there, that I'm wondering, is it a limitation of what we have currently, or have we just not found something yet?
Yeah, and I think as well, there should be a bigger emphasis on narrative expression and like narrative skill. I think if we can find better ways of allowing people to tell a better story and thus perform better in game, I think is overall better, because that's something players can actively work on, be good at, rather than honestly like, all right, I'm going to take some swings here, and some of these shots are going to be aimed at the Pathfinder community. I'm sorry, but this is just the reality. I'm tired of spreadsheet warriors in the tabletop area, because I don't feel someone who's really, really good at crunching the numbers, making the ideal like peak performing build, serves the concept and the idea of tabletop. I think that serves the idea of board games or strategy games. I don't feel like that element enhances tabletop in any way.
I think there are elements of where you can have mathematical skill in a game, or have like a board game element of tabletop, but there is certain points where it's like this is like the maximum amount of skill expression for a lot of tabletop games is uh you know the math, therefore you can make the optimal picks. That, to me, if anything, I only differ in the idea of like that just sounds boring, of like that's all you can do. Because like
Yeah.
I like Pathfinder because I like that the game is tactical in
Yeah.
some way,
No.
where I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a tactical CRPG, that same kind of feeling. So I can make good decisions in a turn-based game that then like swing in our favor, and but I also have the floor to go outside the box and do something crazy and fun that can also turn things in our favor. Like I think there's a fundamental difference between those two concepts. I'd like to see more of the latter, of like games that really allow players to be mechanically good with it without becoming like full optimized number crunchers.
Right. And I think there's been a misconception of what I said here, because you said you disagree, but I agree everything with what you just said.
If also, anything, it's the pure, I don't know, I'm less tired of I just disagree in the aspect of like I don't feel the exact same way about number crunching. I see it as a flaw of like a lot of games, and if the farthest I think of it is like, man, that feels a little boring. That's all it is. I think it's a differ of emotional investment in it.
I mean, what do you think I feel about it, I guess?
Your statement of it, that was like, man, this is bad for tabletop.
So what I said, and Gnarly, I think, also misunderstood what I said. I said the idea of number crunching doesn't serve tabletop. The idea of making perfect builds is not something that makes tabletop better. I didn't say you shouldn't make a fun build or do interesting things. You shouldn't have choices and everything. Because yeah, I agree. You don't need a spreadsheet to do Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We had an argument about this literally two chats ago about this, you know, when I was saying you don't need to play an optimal wizard to enjoy playing a wizard. And the fact that there is an optimal wizard doesn't diminish the fun you can have with your own wizard. And it's harder to munchkin min-max into a single thing. That's depending on scale, that part, because whenever it comes to min-maxing in Pathfinder, it's only a talk of +1, +2, and only a talk of like a handful of damage. Right, yeah, see, and that's on me, right? You guys misunderstood because of maybe the way I expressed it. What I was saying, though, is if in tabletop it is viewed or desired to min-max your numbers as best as possible, that very idea doesn't serve the overall concept of what makes tabletop good.
I think there is that's hitting a fun point of like, while like the optimization discussion we had, where I'm like, yeah, I like optimizing, and
Sure,
I want to make something very optimal while staking true to my want of making a fun character.
mm-hmm.
A key thing there that you're hitting is if the game is really incentivizing you to do it, as in there is a correct way to play, and the correct way to play it is by min-max optimizing, that feels like a failure of the tabletop, because like that's not good. You should have a game that you can optimize if you want, but the rest is fun and you can have fun. But if you have a game where like the balance is like you got to know exactly what you're doing and you got to make something very effective, or else like Pathfinder 1E, Anima Beyond Fantasy, those are just two games where you kind of have to optimize and know what you're doing, otherwise you will make a garbage character.
Well, see, the funny thing about what you said, and the thing is that Pathfinder 2nd Edition is actually not excluded from that. Because what you said was, and I'm using this to clarify, not to argue, that if a game incentivizes you to min-max, that's a failure of the system, right? The thing is that there's many people who would disagree with you on the fact that min-maxing in Pathfinder isn't already doing that. For instance,
I think when I say incentivize, I mean incentivize through like negative stimuli, because there are video games, and a lot of times they are much older RPGs where you have to exploit systems that were not intended. That is more what I'm hitting on.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to think of off the top of my head a couple games that hit this. The easiest one I can think of is a game no one's played here. I Divine Cybermancy, which is a very fun game because it's made by insane people.
Right.
Where it is a game where you're like, it's a big weird source shooter RPG, and a lot of these levels are so bad in like how movement is designed. You have to exploit the movement system and the upgrades to make a character that just moves stupidly fast and can't get hit. Like that is an element you have to do to play the game normally. And I think some older RPGs hit that element of, not in that extreme, obviously, because it's always going to be GM dependent. But I think there are games that the general balance and how they're created incentivizes you through the threat of not being able to play your character.
Right.
That you have to optimize. And then there's the difference of Pathfinder being something tactical incentivizes me to optimize in the same way I would when that CRPG drops for it, because I want to make a character that does the thing I want the best. I think those are the two different versions of incentivize I'm trying to hit.
Yeah. So what you really are saying is it's a failure of a system if it demands optimization.
If it's punishing you for not optimizing and making a character for flavor, I think that is a failure.
Yeah.
If a game is pushing you to learn the system better, I think that is a victory of game design.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that statement. I think the idea of the game always has the opportunity to ramp up its difficulty to challenge you mechanically speaking, I don't think is a bad thing at all.
It's like, I don't think D&D could challenge me difficulty wise. Like there's not much else tactically I can do, but I feel like you can run a Pathfinder combat that is difficult. And I know this because you've done this.
Yeah.
The fights that are difficult, you still can win. If you understand Pathfinder, you know that it's not like a failure state that you're reaching, because like this is just how it is. The decisions you make are fundamentally different. But like, I like Pathfinder 2e because it's really hard to make something bad. Like you have to try, and you can make something that operates well, and it has those elements of a game where you're like, yeah, I can play this very casually. I maybe was handed a character sheet and I built it farther from there. But I think if the game then takes a person to be like, hey, you know, there's these kind of things you can do. If you pick this feat and combo with that, this works. If that gets you going, oh, I wonder what else I can do, and make something really fun, I think that's a game design victory to like make you want to invest more mental, energy into the game. Like that to me is a win, because that's what you want. You want people to be kind of sucked in and fully enjoy your game. I think if it's making you do that through the threat of like your character's not going to work, or I'm going to kill your character, try again, and like that is the only incentive, is that negative stimuli, I think that is a bit of a miss.
Sure. Yeah, I think I get what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I think a game that works mechanically well is a good thing. You know, I think a game that has a overall design principle that allows players to get better at essentially designing characters is good to a point, because again, I don't subscribe to the idea that mechanical fidelity equals better character. So I think it can, and I think you can have games that are like that, but I don't think a character necessarily has to be designed well to have good tabletop. And in fact, I've known people who make very bad, mechanically speaking, characters who essentially won tabletop because they enjoyed it a lot and had a lot of fun.
It's the separation of build versus character, as in like personality and narrative. I always like me a game that finds a mix of both, because I always love it when I have a thing in a game where I'm like, oh, I was already going to do this. You're rewarding me for it mechanically? Thanks. Like that's all what I want. I like that Pathfinder has methods of doing it. I think it could really extend a little harder in the non-combat department. I'll be honest. I love Pathfinder combat, but you know, I like a couple more. If you gave every class like, I don't know, maybe 4 more feats that weren't combat related, I feel like I'd be a happy man.
Yeah, I agree. But, I mean,
yeah.
So this is, I think the part I now realize is when you're talking theory, eventually you're going to start getting so granular or so like focused that you kind of start slipping into parts that other people can't really like obtain or access, you know? And I think I fall into that a lot of like, I'm explaining something that's very different than I feel like a lot of people are capable of like fully not comprehending, but more like are willing to go to that depth to reach. Because like a lot of these conversations always make me sound like I'm a big role play like stand, and like role play is the only thing that matters or whatever. Which isn't the case. I advocate for mechanics for everything. I love games that are mechanically chunky on both sides of the spectrum. Mechanically chunky, narratively and mechanically speaking. And the interesting thing about this is we were talking about failure and like what a character should or shouldn't do, and this kind of led into talking about builds and like, do I think games should have builds? Yes, of course. I think games definitely should have builds. What I'm talking about mostly isn't the fact that a game has builds or not. I think builds are an expression for how much you want to necessarily like get into the game or not. But what problem comes from builds, and the thing that I'm trying to analyze is you have, I know, different thresholds for how effective of a build should be than other people, despite the fact that like the game can be as complicated as the GM wants. Because we've had this argument on stream before where people said, if you're not optimizing, you're intentionally choosing to take more damage, be more likely to die, or your combats are lasting longer because you're not taking the most optimal like damage or the most optimal thing. Where I know you, and you even said earlier, said, I like to optimize to a point while still remaining within the borders of the theme or idea for my character and everything like that, and the way you can express that character.
I think a chunk of it does hit the fun of the English language, where different kind of like terms will mean different things. Because I think there's the line where I think of sometimes when it's where because I know it's not the point you're making, where it's like, yeah, you don't need to optimize. You can make these characters that aren't as good as they can be. There's the part of me that thinks like, why would I make a purposefully bad decision though, for like gameplay wise? And like that's not what it actually means. It's because like that's not the best way to view it. A lot of games, that's not a way that that really lands. But there always is that jump of, I'm not gonna make an intentionally bad decision with a character when when a character's narrative just as well fits a optimally good decision in character creation. Like that is where I think some of the, I guess, argument misunderstanding sometimes hits. Because it's literally with me saying incentive. It's just what better word works for a game kind of forcing you to participate in a thing, because otherwise you're gonna get your ass beat.
Yeah. And that's why like I take the time to like kind of to go into the points and kind of ask you questions and stuff where, you know, you say incentive, right? But what you meant by incentive was the game doesn't de-incentivize you to build, you know, better, or the game punishes you for not building good enough. You know, that's something that's very, very different than a game incentivizing you to just do better. Like from your perspective, what you were saying was very much like, I want a game where I can play it and then build better and it's all good, you know? versus the original statement, which was more of a game is bad if you have to play at a certain level to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also just enjoy like games that give me the chance to make builds, because I think it's like literally the point I was making earlier of tabletop feels like a type of game that is hard to quantify skill. Like you can't, it's really hard to do that in a game where add number to other number, because there's not a lot of flashing lights and funny effects happening in front of you on a screen.
Well,
it hits different if you go Foundry. Like, because even though I know logically speaking in Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever, when I do the big damage in a fireball, it is literally I added number to a number. Hallelujah. It hits a little different, I feel, in a video game than it does a tabletop game. Just because there's the inherent game feel difference of somebody telling you a thing you did worked rather than seeing a cool thing. It's why Lancer on Foundry hit different. I'll be super honest. Like just seeing the funny effects kind of made it hit. My threshold for a lot of things is I am so down to play a game, any game, if the group is good. Well, like Monster of the Week game itself, it's fine. It's a fine enough tabletop game. Our group made it a 10 out of 10 game. Like it made me enjoy the campaign of it. I like me a game that wants me to invest time and thought into doing something cool with it. I think it's the difference between let's say an ARPG, like a fucking Path of Exile. I love making builds for it. I love the mechanical expression of that game. I still enjoy Elder Scrolls like Oblivion and Skyrim, but good lord, the concept of a build in those games is very stupid. That's not a thing. You can kind of do everything in a game where you did an action, therefore you're going to level it. At some point you will become good at everything. That's not a build.
Yeah. Well, kind of, but yeah. It's well, and that's the funny thing is, so my original statement way back when we started this tangent of I think Spreadsheet Warriors, the idea of Spreadsheet Warriors is kind of or doesn't add anything to what actually makes narrative games. It's the idea that some people have that if you're not doing the most damage possible, you're playing incorrectly.
Yeah, that I'm not a fan of, like, that sentiment.
And so that's why I was specifically saying Spreadsheet Warriors, people who are obsessed with the numbers, people who in some way are correct. If you're not doing the most damage possible, you are intentionally choosing not to by grace of, you can do it, right? You can choose to make a good character or not. And I think it's interesting to see the reaction, right? And again, another reason why I love having you as a co-host, because it's something where I'm talking about a very deep, like, concept in theory when it comes to tabletop, but all your reactions are a lot more standard. I think a lot of people have the same kind of ideas of, you're telling me my build doesn't matter. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you think doing a little bit less damage, taking an extra round in combat makes you better or makes your character essentially better designed than someone else's, is wrong. And that's not the point of tabletop in the first place.
Thinking about it, I think the actual biggest detriment and maybe the biggest failure of Spreadsheet Warriors is that they min-max their character build, but they should be min-maxing a personality.
Right.
Because I think that would fix a lot of it in my head. Because all I'm thinking of, my biggest thing about Spreadsheet Warriors is they're all really fucking annoying.
Yeah.
And if they were like making a hyper optimized character, but also like made a cool guy, and like the character was really fun narratively, I don't care, man. Like, have fun. If you're also like cool and nice, and maybe like instead of the common sentiment they have of you're playing the game wrong if you're not doing it like this, they're instead, oh, hey, did you know there's like a combo that you could do like with this and this? And like if you do it conversationally and someone's like, oh, I actually didn't realize that. Thanks. That hits the character thing I wanted to do. Like that's a much different vibe than you're playing tabletop instead of like, hey, you might not know that this is a thing, where your reaction can be, oh, thanks for the suggestion, or I actually did know, and for this reason I made this decision. And then they're like, okay. That's
Sure.
Turns out if you're normal things hit a little different.
Right, but like again, my comment wasn't even necessarily like don't be an asshole. My comment was it doesn't serve TTRPGs. Like the idea of it is yeah, of course, don't be an asshole. If you want to help people make better character decisions, I mean, fuck. That's what I do all the time. I tell my players, hey, there's this thing that I think would work for your character really, really well. But I think a very stark difference from my approach to it and other people's approaches to it, or at least like Spreadsheet Warriors, for instance, is I look at your character as the whole meal, the narrative and the numbers, you know. So when I offer you things, I'm looking at, okay, what matches your themes, what matches the mechanics you enjoy interacting with, and then what overall functions best. All those things together. But a Spreadsheet Warrior, and the whole idea of the Spreadsheet Warrior is this is optimal and this is what works best, is them coming up to you and being like, hey, did you know Fireball just does more damage at the spell level than like Snowball or whatever, you know? And it's like, yeah, but I'm an Ice Mage. Like, why would you tell them that, you know?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Completely ignores everything that they were doing and is just a, you know, hey, here's the optimal thing, right? And so my whole argument, the whole thing I've been saying this whole time, is optimal numbers do not serve tabletop. I think if we were to have real like high profile tabletop, like if I was to think of the peak Pathfinder 2e player, right, the absolute best Giga Chad god out there, there's someone who don't talk about big numbers and being the most optimal all the time. Their characters, they're people who talk about super interesting characters, super dynamic, what they can do, can fulfill a narrative and a story that they're really aiming for, while simultaneously being very mechanically savvy and very mechanically like adept, you know?
Yeah, they like that sounds exactly like these Spreadsheet Warriors need to optimize a personality. Like they need to optimize them some social skills,
right?
Because I think that the optimization, it's not the end of the world if like your character isn't perfect. And man, if you want to go super hard in the numbers, at least keep it in your own camp. Be cool about it.
Yeah.
There's always the difference of suggestion versus like, hey, you're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
Because sometimes literally, people don't know. So that's about reading the room, reading and like understanding
social skills.
Literally, I think that is now my full position that I'm, and all I'm thinking about is like, man, these like number cruncher like players would be a lot more tolerable if they weren't so fucking annoying. Like, just be cool about it. Because I don't like a lot of stereotype stuff, but I've met a lot of people exactly like that, like what we're describing.
Right, exactly.
I don't like any of them.
And like I said, number crunchers don't serve the tabletop. That's the thing. Like, optimal, most damage, whatever. People say, no, I want to make an optimal character. Yes, but we're talking about two very different types of optimal. You're talking optimal for what I want to do. I'm talking optimal as in most mechanically capable in combat.
And a lot of times, the view is that one detracts from the other. A player who's going super, super hard optimization is probably not thinking as much about the narrative. And a player that is not thinking about, like, say the optimization of it is sometimes viewed as ignoring the mechanical element. I think both ideas, the actual stance and like capability of players normally is a spectrum kind of in the middle of that, and the perfect balance is like somebody who is very knowledgeable about what the game can do, how to get exactly what they want out of it in their character, while achieving a great narrative construct. Like, those are the things that should be in perfect accordance, perfectly balanced, and not one to the other.
We've finally got to the point where I've been standing this whole time, which is the whole time. Every time I get someone has some kind of argument back about what I'm currently saying, it's always that thing you just said, right? The idea that one detracts inherently from the other. And that's never been what I've said ever. It's more of what I'm talking about is the idea of an extreme, right? The idea of the spreadsheet warrior, an imaginary person that is not necessarily related to anyone, because literally, like, we were talking about this two times ago when I said, if you want to play a druid, it doesn't matter how good of a wizard someone else is, right? And everyone kind of like roughly agrees with that. That's the thing that like I was arguing against, which was it doesn't matter if there's a effectively better class than what you currently are playing at a thing, because that's not the point of the game. That's not the point of your character in the first place, you know? But like the knee-jerk reaction, the idea is someone says optimization is bad. That means they hate building characters, or they say all that matters is making or they say, hey, as long as you do the biggest numbers, everything is okay. They must hate telling story. Like the thing though, and the reason why I called it, I was taking a swing at the Pathfinder 2e community, is do you see people in these forums, Reddit threads, whatever, arguing about how it fits their character? Sometimes, but not really. What they're talking about is the pure mechanical finesse. Does this do better than this? Is this more damage than that? Or whatever. And I dislike the idea of the number cruncher and the whole idea of number crunching in general, because it's just one half of the game that they're talking about. And I don't think I can trust someone to make an interesting, fascinating character if all they talk about is how much damage they do.
Yeah, I think there's the element of it where, it's kind of the nature of the discussion where, just as we've gone on, especially with the internet, it always kind of hits that lens of it just sounds like a detraction of the other for a lot of points. And specifically with this, because there is that like view on both sides, like having interacted with people who are farther in both extremes. Like there are times where it's literally, they don't even want to play the game right. They just want to tell make believe. Or like, all they care about is doing more damage. They don't want to play an interesting game. Like I've heard both from people, like in earnest. It's like, yeah, that's not always how it be. I'm also thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, Pathfinder players, especially on Reddit, the people that like the idea of playing Pathfinder and probably haven't played in a Pathfinder game, where all they care about is the math. I'm also sitting here thinking about it, and I'm like, how else can we discuss the game in a way that matters? Because I'll be honest, if someone is making a Reddit thread or whatever about, this ability is so cool, it suits my character such and such, I'm gonna start tuning out like a stranger describing to me their dream. Like I don't care, man. Like if it's a pure informational aspect, I want to know the raw number and the mechanics of it. Like that, the discussion of it, I feel like is harder for narrative than mechanics. Mm-hmm. But because it's a lot more weighted in mechanical like conversation, that's just kind of how the community starts to tilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very interesting viewpoint on it as well, is the idea of expressing narrative. It's just like, yeah, cool, tell me about your story, I guess. Tell me about your character. No one likes hearing about your characters. Let's just be honest. We've all done it. We've all talked about our characters. No one wants to know. No one cares.
Like, if I am friends with you, I care. If I don't know you, I don't give a shit, dog. Like, I don't. I only care. You know what? I'll care more if I know the people in the game. And like, I'm like, oh yeah, such and such game. Like, tell me about the game and your character in their game. Because I'm friends with everybody.
Right.
Like, if I just met you, that's fully my camp. I don't give a shit. You are a stranger describing your dream. If you are a good friend of mine describing your dream. All right, that sounds funny because I can think about why your brain fed you this information. But like that it ends completely at the point of like most people.
Yeah.
It's less interesting to talk about.
And like this is why, like, honestly, I've been chafing against the Pathfinder community for a while. Like, I've been looking at some of the comments on my videos and everything like that, and people just aren't engaging with the things I like about, like, I love Pathfinder, right? But it's hard to continue feeling that when every single comment in a video is very much leaning on the game side of things. And in my videos specifically, I talk very much from a balanced perspective on all things. Like, I'm like, here's how this can work narratively. This could be really cool for your character. Mechanically speaking, this is pretty okay. It doesn't really do this, that, or whatever. But it does this thing really, really well, you know? It's, again, like Ultra Ego. Ultra Ego has absolutely, no, not absolutely zero. Has a few, like, combat-y things you can kind of do that are kind of just ass, if I'm going to be honest. But I think Ultra Ego is really, really good in S tier as far as archetypes is concerned because of the things it can narratively let your character do. It is amazing for setting your character up to do the very specific thing that Ultra Ego is, which is to socially obfuscate yourself, to hide yourself in a way that makes it hard for people to discern what your character is about and be in plain sight rather than just mechanically hiding from them. And I think that's way more interesting. And I think if we were to talk about what these conversations would look like in a perfect world, right, where everyone is a balanced individual who aren't just, I don't know, number pilled or story pilled or whatever. I think it would be a bunch of people saying like, hey, I really like this. Conceptually, this is very, very interesting. On the mechanic side, it's kind of meh, but you know, people who give very balanced takes on all sides of things, which is just never going to happen. That's a fantasy beyond fantasies, you know?
Like, you can always disclaim it as much as I know you do in your videos. And like, I can very much see there is a horde of lurkers who, or even people that found it through like the build stuff. Because I've seen it in the wild, like on Reddit and stuff. People liking the like build content you've made because they like the story aesthetic of it. And like, then there's just the fact that people who are very, very obsessed with the mechanics and the numbers are just so much more likely to be vocal.
Yep.
And like, that hits that exact same thing. I think that if it just comes to online discourse with strangers, the thing people default to is the mechanics of it. Because like, I think it takes a lot more personal, emotional investment to give a shit about like the roleplay aspect of tabletop with a stranger.
Well, you know, it's a relevancy thing, right? If someone is telling you information, your level of interest is going to be based on overall relevancy. Do you find the thing they're talking about interesting? Could you use the information that you're receiving from this individual? When it comes to roleplay things, how is that useful to you in any way, you know? Unless the person is, you know, very eloquently speaking and talking about like different kinds of methods for how their character does things, or like expressions and stuff like that. Conversations we just don't see a lot of elegance in normally. But like narratively speaking, when someone is telling you about their character, that information is almost zero relevance, which makes people just zone out.
Yeah, but they're telling you about something you can have zero actual, I guess, influence with. You can't do anything with that. Where it's fundamentally different for someone to tell you about, maybe you missed a session. They're going to tell you about what their characters got up to on the session you missed. Yeah. That is like a fundamentally different experience. Yeah. And like, people are going to interact with stuff differently, especially like actual informational videos based on what they're trying to get out of it. Are they trying to get pure mechanical knowledge, or are they going for character inspiration? They're going to interact with the moments of like, this mechanically good, narratively it's very good. Like, they're gonna take in that information differently. Yeah, and that's why, you know what's really relevant to almost everyone? The numbers. How good is this feat versus this feat? How much damage does this weapon do versus this other thing?
so much of it is that's really relevant, and that's why people really latch on to that and really like obsess over those things, because right, who's got time to listen to other people's bullshit? All you want to do, you're a scholar out here just trying to find out what is the best stuff for your characters. You just want to get your greedy little hands on as much cool things for your character as possible, so that the next character you make is even better, or the character you're currently playing is even better. And what does that is either the numbers or relative feats and abilities that fit the theme of the character that you are going to play. Alter ego becomes way more interesting to someone who's trying to do that mechanically in the game than for people who are not interested in doing that in the game whatsoever. But what everyone is always doing in the game, or at least pretty usually, is dealing damage, hurting people, or using different spells and abilities for different things. And that's why relevancy is kind of like the death of nuance when it comes to tabletop.
Yeah, like fully that. It's the balance of it, you know? And it's the reason I'm very happy I'm a lore guy instead of a rules guy. Because, like, the conversations will hit different. I have annoying people that come through as well, though.
Mm-hmm.
They're just the different flavor of the people that... The one that gets me, it gets me so bad. In the same way that all those number crunchers are so annoying in your comment section, are the people that are like, yeah, that information of, like, the lore that's evidence-based, I don't know about it. Here's my headcanon.
Right.
Like, no, what the fuck are you talking about?
People
it's
who got
not
different
true.
vibes from something and thus think the story or whatever is actually this way actually. They don't believe what was written on the page.
Yeah, and like you can have a headcanon, sure. I don't really like headcanon like at all. I don't engage with that. But like it was the best example. It's the one that got me. It lives in my head rent free. Is somebody coming in my Rylanor video and being like, yeah, Rylanor, that his story it was Imperial propaganda because it's impossible for him to be on that planet at that time period. Because they assumed it took place during the Horus Heresy. And the whole time I was like, what? No, it's just not what it was. The book explicitly says that it is in the 41st millennium. Like, it takes place here. And, like, here's the quote. And they were just like, nah.
Yeah.
No. And I was like, you have to be fucking with me. I can't believe you're a real human being on this earth. I'm just getting so mad at them. I'm getting mad at the memory of them. Like, I hate that person. Like, I'll be so honest.
Yeah, because this is something I struggle with, right? Because I am a true tabletop, like, no-lifer. I talk about it all the time. I'm obsessed with it, and I'm obsessed with it in every aspect. I love the story as much as I love the mechanics. I love the narrative as much as I love the goofy builds, And it makes my interactions with it very hard because of relevancy, because when I'm talking about a thing, people are only going to care or are going to view it only from as relevant as it is to them and their stuff. So if it's not something that's relevant to them, they're going to default to how much damage or how much effectiveness it has in combat or whatever compared to anything else. Or conversely, someone's just like, yeah, this is really good, but I just don't like using this. I think this weapon is bad because it makes all these people just play like with one weapon and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it's hard being someone who stands at like this true center point of the conversation, because no matter what points I make, I have to talk about one side or the other. This whole thing in last stream, or not last stream, but the stream before last stream as well, was me talking about how this side of the conversation is bad for the game because it ignores some core elements. And then people are just like, oh, so you're on this side. It's like, no, I'm right here. I'm in the middle. I'm just talking about this side right now because that's the point of my conversation. Maybe I could use language that is more like, I don't know, inclusive on both sides of the argument or something like that. but I think in the end, it's just going to be people are going to have a very knee-jerk reaction to different types of ideas because they have in their head their own like general idea of how things should be or how they prefer things. And so it's just like, I think spreadsheet warriors are bad, so you hate builds. It's like, no, that's not what I said. You know, literally, it's not what I said. I think builds should exist.
It's the thing where it makes more sense why a lot of YouTube videos specifically have a lot of disclaimers.
Yeah.
Because it's purely like a, hey, before I can see you start typing, like, calm down. It's way more nuanced than this. It's just, I'm happy that the nuance I have to have is that now some toys I talk about are women. And that's where I have to give a nuanced opinion, I guess. That's the world we're in, instead of, I guess, the delineation of characters and players and how people engage with it. It's funny worlds we live in, huh?
I'm glad I have the linguistic ability, maybe? I don't even know if that's the right word for it. I have the ability to talk through these kind of things and to like properly explain these. I can't imagine feeling the way I do without the ability to properly express it in the way I usually do.
I imagine that is a lot of people in the like online discussion, because I've interacted with that many times, and I imagine you have too. It's just that person where they're like very opinionated, and you're just like, please communicate what you're trying to say. Like you are not communicating this very well, especially through like online text. It's just like, come on, man, please.
Yeah, well, it's also just like to feel strongly about a thing, but not to be able to properly talk about it and thus kind of get beaten down in a conversation with people who are just more, you know, linguistically capable also just doesn't feel good. So it's something that like, I'm lucky that I am the way I am because it allows me to have very good conversations, not conversations that necessarily like stonewall in the middle of it. Though I have had those conversations, but that's usually because the other person refuses to properly engage with the conversation, you know?
Yeah.
Like some content creators out there.
Yeah.
No names.
But yeah, yeah, and you know, I'm at least happy where I'm at the lens I'm at, where I have my opinion because it's based off of, especially tabletop, it's usually based off game feel.
Yeah.
I care about my own experience with game feel. I don't really care about most things. I don't care about the outcome of the argument. I don't care about like convincing the other person. I honestly just think the discussion is interesting because I like hearing why other people believe the things they do, because I like knowing that I'm speaking to a person who has reasonings for like their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I don't actually care what people's opinions are. I care that you have a reason and didn't just go like shrug your shoulders and be like,
right.
I just feel like this. It's like, no, you should have, even if it's as simple as I think this feels better. That's a good enough reason, like that you at least justify an opinion.
Yeah, well,
I like the discussion. I don't care about the outcome. That's why I like this show, because I can interact with these discussions, and at the end of the day, I don't actually care about what resolution we've reached. I don't care about winning an argument. I don't think either of us really do. I just like having the conversation because I like thinking about a problem, building out the nuance of it, and trying to figure out where other people lie.
Yeah, well, and you know, I like this podcast too because you're a person who doesn't get overly invested in the thing, and I can use your viewpoints or the way you state things to like properly dig in to like what I view as a pretty general, because I think a lot of people who engage with tabletop in general have that kind of video game vibe of wanting the game to feel good, you know, kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it creates a very balanced experience that doesn't have any like high emotion in it, because I understand I played tabletop with you for long enough to know generally that we both vibe pretty much the same on everything tabletop related, and thus I can get into these more like analytical parts of it to properly like explore and express things, because I think you also have some very interesting views that I just don't consider, because sometimes I do just get into the weeds of it a bit and can't really see some of the more obvious things.
It's always the balance that it's good to have different types of people like who think about and engage with things very differently, to actually like talk about all this stuff, because you reach conclusions. I think the biggest thing I've actually changed my mind on, or at least like I guess adapted my opinion, less like it wasn't like a convincing that I was wrong. It's more of, oh, I was just not thinking about this right and communicating it well, was my line in the sand about rules light and rules crunchy games. I over time realized, no, I actually like a lot of crunch. I think I just need to talk about tabletop differently. I think I'm just discussing it differently. I still have my line of I don't like crunch that is there for the sake of it. And I think that's a different viewpoint than all crunchy games are like this. Right. It's that there are elements of this in games that I don't like. That is a different point where I can then say, oh, I'm not just a big rules light fan. I like the game. I just like these elements for different reasons. Like that was the bit that helped with this. I was able to expand that thought into something a bit more nuanced, because like it was just discussed over time.
Well, and it also, what makes it great is that like in some ways you have very like tabletop casual viewpoints, but also simultaneously you were like a film major and you're interested in both cinema and narrative. And so it creates an interesting cross point between our two perspectives where like I definitely worry and care way more about the nuance of tabletop than you do, but we both care equally about the narrative and the cinema and like the general feel of how the story goes and how the individual elements kind of tie into that.
A lot of times too, it helps that I'm friends with you, but even still, there are a lot of times where I can look at it and be like, yeah, logically speaking, that is correct. I understand why it works like this, and I think it is one of the best ways this could operate. I don't like it because it feels bad. Like that is sometimes where my stance is, because like I care about game feel, and at the end of the day, that is like the thing that matters. Is sometimes you just have to dress things up a little differently when it's mechanically the exact same thing. Like it's just that's how it hits sometimes.
Or sometimes something that is mechanically, technically very good, optimal, can just feel bad. I mean, we talk about Magus. It's like yeah, literally. Magus is the peak example of you hate Magus if you like telling interesting narratives or have very strong characters, because Magus is very restrictive in the idea that if you like playing at least somewhat optimally, having that big red, spell strike button in front of your face just doesn't feel good to ignore.
No, talk about a game that incentivizes you to play a specific way, huh?
Right.
Like, yeah, that is the best example. Like, because God, everything I read about Magus and all of the new shit they get, all the mechanics, I'm like, this rules. Touching it, playing it, I hate it.
Right.
It feels so bad.
Well, and it's like you hear both sides of the argument. You either hear people who absolutely love Magus and they're like, I love Magus. I like how the spell strikes work. I like doing this or that. And I'm just like, how can you enjoy something so restrictive? But simultaneously, there's just like, you can just not spell strike. And I'm like, whoa, now. We're playing the game.
What's the point of playing Magus if I can't spell strike?
Yeah, what's the point of playing? I will just multi-class archetype fighter into wizard or vice versa.
Yeah. I literally built a wizard fighter that is like, I'm a wizard. I'm going to dress this character up to be a fighter, and it operates better and more smooth than Magus, and I enjoy it way more.
Yeah,
that's just sometimes it's all it is. And I at least can understand the takes I hear about Magus, because sometimes on dark days, it's 2 a.m. I haven't slept. I look at Path Builder and I read through Magus and I go, you know what? This is pretty cool. Right. Like I enjoy this.
Yeah, it's and Magus is such a great like talking point for us, because it's literally the thing that like instantly all ideas we have about tabletop or whatever align. Everything goes perfectly down the center of just
exactly.
like, of like
both of our experience with Magus is exactly the same when our both of our characters that we played.
Right, it's like we both love making good optimal characters, mechanically good feeling characters. I'll answer that question here in just a minute, Goat. And then we'll probably end stream because we're going a little bit over. But also I hate super restrictive gameplay.
Yes.
And so it's just like instantly I understand Magus is very good. I played Magus. I've hit the big damage numbers. I know how effective Magus is. That does not mean I enjoy playing the Spell Strike character, and I will not play a Magus and choose not to ever Spell Strike, because then why the fuck are you ever picking Magus mechanically speaking? It's just it makes no sense.
There's no other thing for Magus that I think carries it. Because like I reached that point through my absolute hatred of the gameplay feel of you are building a character around one major thing. This is like your gameplay. You hit the Spell Strike button, and you're spending a resource for a solid chance to do nothing. Like that is where I hate it. Where I'm like, this feels awful, and because I have to interact with this thing, with Spell Strike, and I have there's no other real options with this class. I might as well play something different that can have a wider range of things it can do.
Yep.
Like I switched from Magus to Wizard, and I had so much more fun just casting spells normally.
Yep.
And I did a lot of damage. I did a scary amount of damage in that game.
Yeah, because wizards are really, really good at area damage. That's
casters are bad now with the
I know, right? Yeah,
that
because I can't kill a
aspect
boss
during
as quickly as a fighter. I'm a bad class and shouldn't exist.
Oh, that was so funny reading all that through the remaster switch when I was actively playing a wizard who got the best damage award every turn. Oh, so great.
Admission, if I ever get in a game as a player, I will play as an old Magus. That's completely fine. We're not saying Magus is bad. I think the point we've been making very clearly is Magus is good. We just hate how it plays.
Yeah,
I
love the idea of Magus. I will never touch that class again. But because it is a great class on paper, I can see why people enjoy it.
Sure. I've done 400 damage in a round, 300 plus damage in a round. I know the allure. Trust me.
I've done like 100 damage in a round with Magus. I get it.
Anyway, let me answer Goat's question here. You like big damage button? That's completely fine. I just like more dynamics than that. Last argument, those spreadsheet warriors should learn to play the stock market. I'm sure they do already. I'm sure a lot of those really hard spreadsheet warriors are already kind of in stock markets and or crypto.
I think that you would be surprised and saddened at the amount of those players who take that skill only to 4X games.
Yeah.
Where they're like, I've optimized my Stellaris economy to this extent, or my Europa Universalis economy, and you look at it, you're like, you should do the stock market. They're like, that's boring.
Right. So for Goats, do I mind answering a question why I switch away from Pathfinder to content? I've not. I have a baby, and making content is incredibly difficult. I wanted to talk about the Cosmere because I was really hyped about the Cosmere game. It was on my mind, and I needed to push it out. And to be fair, when I made those videos, that was at a time that I had the most free time, but she is now a little bit more complicated to take care of, and it's just harder to make content. I will make Pathfinder content again. I'll make a lot of more content again, but most days I'm watching my daughter. It's an all day thing. Like I don't get as much sleep as I would like. She's pretty hands-on. She's getting a little bit better about that, but she's still pretty hands-on for the majority of the time. And then when my wife gets home and watches our daughter, that's usually all the time I have to do like the rest of my living for the day. So that's when I eat the most. That's when I shower or do whatever I need to do. That's whenever I do like house maintenance, do any chores, do any things like that. So like Wednesday, Thursdays, because those are my wife's days off, are like the only days I actually get to do anything. And the last thing I want to do after a hard week of just not being capable of doing really much of anything is work. So I play video games and hang out with my friends. And to be fair, I also am working on the 333. But that's because that's it's a game that came to me as kind of more of like an epiphany, and I feel like if I work on it, it'll turn into something really, really good. I'll see how long that lasts. But yeah, I haven't stopped making Pathfinder 2e content. I've kind of just have been unable to really make any content out. Like, when was the last time I actually made a video? It's 2 months ago, right?
I think so.
Check. Video. It was a month ago, and it's probably almost 2 months ago now. A month ago, March 13th. So yeah, about a month and a half ago was the last time I did any content at all. And I think that one was even like really rough for me to get out. So it's just been not a lot of time. So I apologize for those who missed my Pathfinder content. I will do my best to get back to it. But baby, that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, that's gonna be it for us today. Thank you all for participating. Thank you to Gnarly, Grendel here, and as well James for chiming in, and Sage. Yeah. Thank you all for being here today. We're going to keep attempting to have Table Talk every Thursday, or at least I will. I can't guarantee Nurgle won't take Alex.
I'll be fine. I'm on the cooldown period now. I won't get sick for at least a couple months.
That's a big ass.
If I was
that's some
this,
confidence, buddy. That's some confidence.
If I was saying this like maybe a year or two ago, that'd be a lie. I've wrapped up a lot of my health a lot better.
To be fair, I only had to Nurgle counter you 3 times last year, so.
Exactly. I've fixed a lot of things about my health, which is why a couple months is my best estimate.
Though, you didn't get Nurgle counter more because I also had to miss a few times last year as well.
That was fate interceding, and also why I'm only extending my estimation a couple months. So I'm not saying a few.
But anyway, Alex, do you have anything to leave us with before we end for today?
Yeah, well, if you like lore content, I make that. It's over Glue Boy. You can go find that on YouTube, or LinkedIn Cam's thing. I am going to be making a video real soon. I got it recorded. I just got to edit it. On the Assassins in Trench Crusade, the best faction, and even better about them. Literally, like this week, new lore dropped on the Assassins. So it's piping hot. It would have been hotter if I didn't get sick, but still, there's gonna be some new information there. And then right after that, I'm going to make a video that is on the orcs. I haven't talked about Warhammer orcs in a long time, and I have a fun concept of a video, so it'll be very nice. So go sub to that.
As for me, right now I'm just working on the 333. If you haven't heard about the 333, that's my newest TTRPG, or I guess the only TTRPG I've really been making publicly. It's been really good. It's got good bones. We're pretty much actively playtesting it live because that's the environment where I work the best. And I think it's really good. So if you want to check it out every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. At some point, we're going to have a Patreon where you can get access to all the current rules when we get it formatted, and I actually write a lot of it down. And you can just access the whole game as it's currently standing for $5 a month. A pretty good deal, I would wager. And in addition to this, as far as content goes, when I get the chance, having a baby is real hard work. Also, I'm getting married in a month, and we have a lot of hard work to get to there. So I just don't have a lot of free time, and I really would like it. We finally passed 9,000 subs. We're almost to 10,000.
Hell yeah.
A goal I tried to set back in December, but life got in the way, and it's understandable. That's just how things are. Divine Mystery is also kind of taking a huge dip, or not Divine Mysteries, War of the Immortals taking a huge dip was kind of unfortunate. But I am still interested in making YouTube content. That's why we're still streaming and everything like that. I will get to it when I have the spoons to do so. But right now I'm pretty spoonless. It's all formula and baby bottles.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that's going to be for us. Thank you all so much for watching. And I guess we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.